Hey everyone, welcome back to RetroBreak and welcome to another retro gaming shop tour. This time we're taking a look at a shop up in Liverpool called Trade and Play, which I found out about last weekend. It's such an incredible shop and I had a great weekend too. I was actually up there with work, and the day before we went somewhere really cool that was kind of retro related as well, called Playbox. And they had a range of different arcade machines there, and we got to play a Mario Kart tournament too, which was really fun, and I got to beat my friend here at Daytona, USA, which I had a great time doing so as well. They also had a bunch of really weird retro gaming related stuff dotted around the place as well, which just made me laugh so much. And the next day, before I came back home, I made it my mission to find a retro gaming shop to make a video for the channel, and I came across this incredible shop called Trade and Play, and they were very kind and let me film inside. So with that said, let's check out one of the best gaming shops that I've visited all year. So here's the entrance to the shop, and before we even get inside, let's take a look at some of the amazing retro games that they had in the cabinet. As you can see there, they had Illusion of Time, which, if you don't know, is my favourite game ever made. That one was complete in box there, with the map as well, which I really love. Also there in the window we have Sonic & Knuckles on the Sega Mega Drive, Gex on the Sega Saturn, which is a great game as well, and then on the next shelf up here we had Castlevania Dracula Chronicles X, which is one of my favourite games in the entire Castlevania series, and definitely one of the best games on the PSP. And there as well we had a really cool Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles LCD game as well. Inside, we've got the shelves here at the start. This was full of really rare and expensive PlayStation 1 games, including the NTSC version there of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. We also have Tales of Destiny at the top as well, which was also really cool to see. On the next shelf down here, we have a PlayStation Vita and an import game to go along with it. And then a game that I'd never actually heard of for the PlayStation 1 here, called Chaos Break. There was £170, so let me know whether you've seen that game before. And again, there's another copy of Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles, and a bunch of other really great PSP games there as well. There was the Metal Slug collection, which is fantastic. And as the camera zooms out a bit here, you can see just how big this shop was too. And it wasn't just retro games, they dealt with a lot more stuff as well. There was every modern system that you can think of. They had anime, they had manga, they had a whole Warhammer area as well. But in this video, I'm just going to be focusing on the retro things in particular. So you can see here, there was some Game Boy and some Game Boy Advance games. And here on this shelf, this was at the back of the room now, we had a bunch of N64 games, all complete in box with the manuals and everything, and some Super Nintendo games there as well, including, interestingly, the Data East collection there for $35, which is pretty cool because that's actually a modern release. And there was some more Game Boy Advance games up the top there. I did actually pick a few of those up, which I'll show you in just a little bit, but before that, let's take a bit of a closer look here at some of the N64 games. Here's a game that I've always been interested in trying to pick up. It is quite expensive, as you can see, this was $70, and it looks like a really fun racing game, and I believe it is quite rare as well, so that was cool to see. There's also some obvious classics there. There was Lilac Wars, Mario Golf, Lego Racers, which is actually a great racing game, Banjo-Kazooie there as well, absolute peak N64 gaming right there. The original Tony Hawk's as well, Turok 2, just an absolutely fantastic range of games there. And here's one of the games that I did actually pick up. This is Puzzle Fighter 2 for the Game Boy Advance. Here's the game that I picked up from the shop, immaculate condition as well. Let's take a quick look at the box and the manual before we move on with the rest of the shop tour. As you can see, everything was presented really nicely inside. The cart's fantastic, the manual's also fantastic, and it's a great game as well. I haven't quite had time to play the Game Boy Advance version just yet, but I played it a lot on the Sega Saturn. I've got the Japanese version on the Saturn, and I absolutely loved it. And now back to the shop tour, and there was another game here that I also picked up on the same shelf, and that one is a game that I'd never actually heard of before at all. It's called Super Bubble Pop. So let me know whether you've ever heard of this game before down in the comments below. It kind of looks like a Bust-A-Move style game, but in a kind of 3D perspective, and apparently there's also some musical element to it as well. And most interestingly, someone on Blue Sky actually told me that according to Wikipedia, there is no PAL version of the game, which is really weird because this is definitely a European copy, as you can see here from the cart, the box, and the instructions. So is Wikipedia wrong, or have I managed to stumble across something very rare and valuable? Anyway, let's get back to the shop and check out some other shelves. And here you can see some more great Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. All three of those are absolute classics, especially Golden Sun: The Lost Age. That would be my pick of the bunch right there on that shelf. Then we have some Game Boy Advances, some Game Boy Colors. They did actually have the Kiwi green Game Boy Color, which I really want to get for my collection because that's the one I grew up with, but I would love to try and get it complete in box. I can see there Skies of Arcadia Legends, which I at one point would have been so excited to find because that game took me ages to get for my own collection. Also Mario Party 7 there as well. I actually remember playing that one back in school and it was a lot of fun, especially with the microphone. And here's a really cool game for the N64, Aiden Chronicles: The First Mage. This is a very rare and expensive RPG for the system, so it was really cool to see that one. I would love to own it one day. And Rakuga Kids as well is apparently a really fun game too. And in this cabinet as well, there was also some great SNES games. We have Secret of Mana, Donkey Kong, with the Go Ape CD, which I don't actually own, so that's really cool. And a bunch of import games below that as well. And there was some very exciting games in this one. Lufia 2, which is easily my top 3 games on the system. Lufia 2 is just an incredible experience. If you've never played that game before, please check it out. It is amazing. And also RetroBreak there as well. A game that again took me ages to track down for my own collection, and I still don't own the instruction manual, whereas the one here did actually have it. So that was really cool to see, and that's the first time I've ever actually seen RetroBreak in a game shop before. And on this next shelf up, we actually had Excitebot's Trick Racing, which I really wish I would have picked up. It was only 15 quid as well. I don't know how I managed to miss that, but it's a game I've always wanted because it just looks so much fun, and I was a massive fan of Excite Truck as well, so I really wanted to experience the sequel that we never got in the UK, annoyingly. And there's some other import games there as well for the NES. And moving up to the top, Alien Hominid for the Game Boy Advance. That's another one that I was really excited to see there too. And on this shelf we have some rare and expensive PlayStation 1 games again. Digimon World and Breath of Fire, both sealed, and I think they're actually pretty good prices for sealed copies of the game. There's also Clock Tower there as well, which is obviously an absolute classic, and Mega Man X5 too. Some more expensive PlayStation 1 games there as well. Apparently that Kingsley's Adventure game is really good, although I've never really seen anything of it, so let me know down in the comments what you know about that game and why it's so expensive too. That would be interesting. And some rare and expensive PlayStation 2 games there as well. I used to know someone who is a big fan of the Hack series, so it's cool to see them games every time I spot them. Here's another cabinet here. This one had some Evercade titles in it, as well as the Evercade Versus controller, and a few random handhelds and game controllers. It's always cool to see this kind of stuff. And some tape games here as well. I believe these were either for the Spectrum or the Commodore 64 maybe. I'm not really that clued in on the microcomputer side of things, so let me know what I'm looking at here. I spotted Outrun at the top there, which is obviously a classic on any system. We have some Lynx games there as well, and I loved experiencing the Lynx for the first time a few years back. There was something there called Dracula. I have no idea what that was. Now, this was really cool to see. Here's some Game & Watch games, and I would love to try and get more into Game & Watch collecting. I have that complete in-box copy of Ball that you can see there. Couldn't make out the price on here, but I assume it was fairly expensive. Game & Watch games are just so expensive, and it seems like a really dangerous hobby to get into, but maybe I'm kind of tempted. And there's some DS consoles there and some 3DS consoles too, and a little bit of modern things on either side of the shelves there. And then we'll briefly take a look at some of the other Nintendo games on this shelf. So it began with some Wii U games at the top. Zombie U there for £3. How can you go wrong with that? Zombie U is an absolute masterpiece of a game and one of my favourite launch titles ever. Also, there were some great games there on the GameCube for very reasonable prices too. Baton Kaitos for 40 quid, that is very good. And Harvest Moon there was fairly cheap as well. In fact, all of these prices are really impressive. You could build up a really good GameCube library with some of the games on offer here. Mario Sunshine there for 20. You cannot pass that up if you haven't got, you know, a good set of games for the GameCube. And looking here at the DS games next to it, there was another range of fantastic games. Spectrobes there for 3 quid. That was another one of my favourite games on the DS back in the day. Even more popular games like Mario Kart DS, they're under 20 quid. Fantastic range of games. Animal Crossing Wild World, of course. Absolute classic, one of the best games on the system. And moving up to the 3DS as well, again, very reasonable prices for all the games. Just an incredible shop overall, honestly, and some of the best pricing that I've seen in a long time as well. Obviously the rare stuff is expensive, but that's to be expected, but the common titles that they had on display here were some of the best prices that I've seen in a long time, to be honest. If you wanted to pick up a good range of Wii games here, No More Heroes for £3. This is insane. Mario Kart Wii for 12. Even the sequel to Korinpa, the Balance Challenge one, for 20 quid. That is actually really good. That's actually quite a rare game, and it's a really fun game as well. And then you have Smash Bros and Mario Galaxy there, 10 and 12 each. Phenomenal pricing overall in this shop. Really, really impressed, really pleased. And now we're taking a look at some of the cabinets that were under the counter where the tills are, and this is usually in these kind of shops where you'll find the loose games, and they had a fantastic selection of loose games here as well. You can see some great prices too for the GBA games up there. If you wanted to build out a GBA collection and you don't care about complete in box, things like Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge for 10 quid, and there again on the Game Boy Color, even some of the more sought after titles were very reasonable. Zelda Oracle of Seasons there for 30. I've seen that go for a lot more in the past. Same there with 1942 as well. The only expensive game there is Konami Collection Volume 4, which is something that I want for my collection, but I want to get it complete in box. But that is actually a really good price for the loose cart, and there was a bunch of other great games there as well, and some for the DS and 3DS. And now looking down here at some of the original Game Boy games, there's a great selection. And then moving down to the bottom here, we have the original Game Boy loose games here, and there was a great selection of games here. Just so much to take in as well. Like, let me know in the comments what games you've spotted here that you think are really good for the system. Rockman World 5 there, that is one of the most sought after games and definitely one of the best on the Game Boy as well. Here's some original Xbox games. I don't really know that much about the original Xbox, but Halo 2 for 2 quid. Can't go wrong with that. That's obviously one of the best games on the system. Jet Set Radio Future there. One of the few games that I did actually have and play on the original Xbox. SSX on Tour is another one of my favourites from that generation. Shadow the Hedgehog for 10 quid. Obviously that one kind of holds its value a little bit, and I do actually think that one might be going up in price soon as well because of the Sonic movie that's coming out. I think more people will be interested in seeing what Shadow's game was actually like. Now here's something cool to see that you don't always see in shops. Here was a bunch of strategy guides and gaming related books and various different things like that. There were some art books as well. And then moving up here, this was also quite interesting. They had a bunch of CDI titles here. Well, not too many of them, and there was only like 3 that were actual games, and the rest are just like movie CDs or like weird soundtrack things. So nothing too exciting there on the CDI front. And then looking along here as well, there was some more Spectrum tapes, which again, like I said, is something that I enjoy looking at, but I don't really understand what I'm looking at, if that makes any sense. I don't know what's compatible with what. I didn't grow up with those computer kind of things. They were a little bit before my time, to be honest, so it is kind of difficult for me to go back that far and really get a grasp of, you know, what's exciting, what's interesting, but I'm definitely up for learning more about things like the Spectrum and the Commodore, so please let me know what games you think I should try and check out for systems like that. And there was some more big box things here. There was Alien Breed there by Team 17, which apparently is a classic. And now we're taking a look at some of the PS1 games, and there was a great selection of PS1 games here. In fact, I'll pause the video there for a second because I did actually pick up 2 of them, which you can see on the top of the shelf there. So I picked up Alundra 2, and I'm a massive fan of the first Alundra game. I brought it up in a video a few weeks ago, and I've been very curious to check out the sequel. I've heard it's nowhere near as good as the first game, but even so, I couldn't pass it up when I saw it, because this is actually the first time that I've seen it in a shop, so I just had to get it, and I will definitely check it out soon and let you know my opinions on it in the future when I do one of the future pickups episodes, I think. And the other game, a game that I'd never heard of before, kind of like the Super Bubble Pop one that I just picked up on a whim because it looked kind of interesting, and it got a 9 out of 10 from the official PlayStation magazine, apparently. This game is called Circuit Breakers, and from what I could see, it kind of looks like a mix of Micro Machines or Revolt, another one of my favourite games from that generation, so really curious to see how this one plays. I'm sure it'll be very fun. And now let's get back to the PlayStation 1 shelf and take a look at what else was up there as well. Chase the Express is a game that I picked up a while back that's apparently really good as well. There's also one of the Final Fantasy games there, the original Gran Turismo, the original Metal Gear Solid as well. They know what games are good as well, because they've put all the good ones facing forward. Quake 2 there as well, one of the Namco Museum collections on the left. Always great to see those kind of retro compilation things. Tony Hawk's Skateboard, and again, we saw that one earlier on the N64, and here's the PS1 game to go alongside it. Let me know which one's better of the two, I really don't know. The world's scariest police chases down there in the corner as well, apparently that one's really fun. And here's some UMDs and some PSP games. PSP is a system that I really need to look into more. Apparently that Pursuit Force one there is a really good game. Maybe I should have picked that one up as well, it was only £4. And here's some more PSP games. I wonder whether that Prince of Persia game's any good. They were all kind of good around that era, so be interesting to know how the PSP one stacks up. And on the next shelf up, we have one of the Legend of Heroes games there as well, and I've been really curious about that series for a long time. There was a God of War game there as well. Darkstalkers Chronicles is of course a great game for the system, and there was some Japanese games for the PSP here as well at the top, and I don't really know much about the Japanese PSP library, so let me know what games are worth playing there. And now let's take a look at some more of those cabinets under the main counter. There's some loose NES games at the top there. Castlevania 1 for 50, that's pretty good there. A few copies of The Adventure of Link there on the NES, and a few more on the shelf just above there as well, including a bunch of the Turtles games. And some N64 games here as well. Mostly PAL games, I also spotted a few Japanese ones there too. Gauntlet Legends there on the left, that's one of my favourite games for the system. Really enjoy playing that one, especially in multiplayer. Such a fun game. And there's Mario Golf, Mario Party there, Wave Race, absolute classic, Bomberman 64. The giant Lilac Wars box was really cool to see on the bottom too. And here we have some Super Famicom games, including one of the Goemon games there, which are all fantastic for the Super Famicom. And some American ones there, some NTSC games too. And some more down there as well, including a boxed copy of Super Metroid there in the corner, which is always cool to see. And a weird arcade stick there too. And then here's some of the PAL games. Secret of Evermore there is one that you don't come across too often for the SNES, so that was cool to see. Also, the game at the top there, Looney Tunes Roadrunner, is actually a really fun game. Very challenging though. And then here's a look at the next shelf down, Super Mario All-Stars. If you've got a Super Nintendo and you haven't got that, that's easily one of the best and most rewarding games for the system, and the fact that it's like 5 full Mario games on one cartridge was just unbelievable back in the day. The Top Gear games are actually really fun too. And then here was one of my favourite parts of the shop. This was like the Sega shelf, or mostly Sega, and then PC games as well. And I don't really look at like PC CD games that often, but it is kind of cool to see, and there are a few that I'm looking for. Nothing that I saw here though. I mostly want to try and get all the PopCap games, because I want to do a video about PopCap, because they were one of my favourite developers back in the day. So let me know as we're looking through here whether you think there was any PC games that were worth picking up. PC games are so dirt cheap as well. It's really good if you want to get into a system on the cheap and you want to build up a physical collection. You can even go to CEX these days and pick up a bunch for like 50p each. And then here's some Mega Drive games. We have Streets of Rage there, Super Hydlide, which is actually a lot better than people give it credit for. Shinobi 3 there, without the instructions unfortunately, else I would have been tempted to pick that one up, because I really want a physical copy of Shinobi 3, because it is such an incredible game. And there's a few more common titles there, Micro Machines, The Simpsons, Earthworm Jim, absolute classic for the system, Echo the Dolphin as well, another one of the best games for the Mega Drive that you can get. And of course the Mega Drive version of Aladdin is amazing too. And then at the top there we actually had a boxed Mega CD and Mega Drive 2, which came with Road Avenger, which is definitely one of the best games for the Mega CD. And here's a look at some of the Dreamcast titles, and we have Shenmue there, an absolute classic, and if you've got a Dreamcast you need to add that to your collection. Sonic Adventure 2 as well, one of the last releases for the system, and definitely one of the best games for it as well. 80 quid is a little expensive, but Sonic Adventure 2, for the Dreamcast at least, is getting kind of hard to find these days, so definitely get it while it's still like under the 100 mark, because I do see it going over that fairly soon in the near future. Nothing too exciting there on the Sega Saturn front. Probably the best game there is probably Manx TT Superbike, which I actually really enjoy. It's a very fun racing game. And Sega Rally there on the top right too. There were some Japanese games there as well. I didn't really look too long at them. And then some Sega Mega CD games down there in the corner, which is always really cool to see. And then on this shelf we have some Sega Master System games. Starting off at the bottom there we have Sonic 2, Sonic Chaos. Both great games for the system, and Sonic 1 as well, obviously. Shinobi there. Sagaya is a great horizontal scrolling shooter. Master of Darkness is one of the best games on the system. Basically Sega's answer to the original Castlevania, which is always really fun. And there were some Game Gear games there as well, including one there called Axe Battler, which I did actually pick up, and I've got it right here. This is a really interesting game in the fact that it's actually part of the Golden Axe series, but it's not a side-scrolling beat-em-up like the rest of the Golden Axe series. This one's actually a top-down RPG, and I've always been super curious to check it out, so very happy to finally own my own copy of Axe Battler. And I've heard it's one of the best games for the system too, so definitely going to give it a try soon. And there were some other complete-in-box Game Gear games there as well, including the Game Gear version of Dynamite Heady, which I've always been really interested to see how it stacks up against the Mega Drive counterpart. On the back wall here we had a bunch of PlayStation 2 games, of course. Every game shop has thousands of PlayStation 2 games, and it is such an incredibly massive library that I've never really took the time to properly explore in that much detail. Thank you so much for watching. Definitely check the shop out if you're ever up in Liverpool. And if you want to check out more shop tour videos, then click the playlist up there. Subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all again very soon. Goodbye.